Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Thursday, March 6, 2021. My name is Danny Hernandez. Bienvenidos to another episode of Sepas. Today's episode is we've entitled A Toda Madre, celebrating Mami, Tias, and Abuelas. As you know, Mother's Day is coming up next week, and we are excited to not only honor the moms and mother figures in our lives, but celebrate some of their accomplishments, especially in our own communities, and figure out exactly how they're doing it all. As some of us are aware, there's within our Latino community, there's some entrenched gender norms that perhaps for some make it more difficult to live out their own truth, while at the same time balancing everything else that goes with being a woman and with being a mother. Mothers play an important role in our lives and help us shape who we become. And so this can be the role is sometimes played by many different people in our lives. So I'd like to just introduce everybody to our guest, Ilenia Aguilar, Ilenia, and Abigail Falango. Welcome to you both. We're excited to have you on. And so to start, let's just jump in and, with some introductions. Ilenia, do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much. Muchas gracias por la oportunidad, for this opportunity to be here. I'm representing todas las madres, las mamacitas de todas las que hablan español, todas las latinas. Es una gran oportunidad. Las madres, abuelas, tías, las mujeres que no solamente that, not just women who have children biologically, but who are raising children and helping with that work and that labor. So my name is Ilenia Aguilar. I live here in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a mother to two boys, both teenagers, a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old. That is the best gift that I could have ever received, is being a mother. I think that, every day, everything that I do is because of them. Whether I am working on a policy lobbying issue, I always think about how will this impact not only my children, but all children. So I'm very grateful to be a mother. Originally from Orizaba, Veracruz, Mexico. Mi mami is de Nogales, mi papá is de Veracruz. I am an immigrant. I was formerly undocumented, moved to the United States when I was an infant. And like many undocumented immigrants, I had a very unstable life. I was always moving, going from school to school, and trying to survive, right? And what I remember, and I still think about, are all those women who helped take care of me, whether they were like my tías, las vecinas, mi mamá, mi abuelita, or las maestras, because they played a big role in who I turned out to be as an adult. So I moved a lot from Tucson to Mexico City to Illinois. So a lot of different experiences, different regions. Even the way I speak is I guess impacted and shaped by the geographical areas I've had to live in. So I'm grateful, despite all of the uncertainty. I had a lot of privileges. I had a lot of access, and that started with a quality education, good teachers, women who told me that I was capable, that I was smart, that I could accomplish anything. So that's how I ended up here in Phoenix, Arizona. But I'm super grateful. I became a citizen in 2014. And in 2016, I was able to vote for the first time ever. That was my American dream. I got to vote for myself, for a woman, for the first time. I won my school board election. I'm serving my second term. What an honor to serve my community, my familias in my district, my state, the country that has given me every tool to succeed. It's such an honor. I'm grateful to be here. Muchas gracias. And I'm honored to be here with Abigail.
What an incredible story. That was one of the best TED Talks I've ever heard. Beautiful. I do have a lot of questions, but before we jump into maybe some of those influencers, Abigail.
I gotta unmute my mic. Saludos, buenas tardes. I am just elated to be here, and oftentimes when it's so much more meaningful to us, it's when everything goes wrong. I have 3 children online learning from home today. And as you can imagine, the internet gets boggled down. And so I was so nervous because this is so important to me. And of course, whatever is going to go wrong, a veces pasa at the last moment. So I'm just grateful to be on. I'm grateful to be sharing space with you here, and then those that are watching us virtually and that will get to watch us later. I always really introduce myself in the same way, and in any chance I get, I feel like that for me, the consistency of it is my identity and how I want to be identified. And in this space, especially como mujer, como madre, como hija, I'm a Chicana, I'm a chica con sangre de Yaqui. And a lot of this background comes, even as the older I get, the more drawn I am to my ancestors, to my mother's mother and her mother's mother. And I feel like there is such a beautiful mezcla of cultures in which I live and exist in any time and space. And in this situation, I feel like we can celebrate it that much more, as my identity as a mother, as a daughter, as a mujer is celebrated. And I rarely get to do that. Most of my professional career is quite frankly, male dominated. And even though it's education, the higher in leadership you go, the more masculinity energy there is. And as a divine feminine, I just always seek amazing spaces to share with my divine feminine hermanas, amigas. And so I consider myself bicultural, bilingual, fronteriza, grew up in El Paso, frontera of Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua. I'm a mother of 3 teenagers, and at some point I hope to share their pictures, because I still wake up every day and I'm like, those kids are mine. It's an unbelievable blessing, and I don't take it for granted. I'm an educator. I consider myself to be a writer, a storyteller, a social scientist, specifically a phenomenologist. I love to talk and share about lived experiences. Lived experiences really contribute so much to our understanding of each other in all spaces. I'm definitely a practitioner, scholar. I'm a huge social justice advocate. I cannot even contain that. It's in me, it's in mi sangre. It's just part of Mama Bear, and partly my ancestors, my grandmothers, and I'll share about that later. I definitely consider myself a capacity builder and a strategist. And as I share space with both of you, I want to circle back to my hermana, because, and hopefully you'll go back there, Danny, I think it's incredible that in the same vein that she is representing one of the most powerful political positions there are, school board. And if no one on here if you're listening, please know that one of the most impactful positions that you can give time and energy to as a school board member, on the same story that we can tell that she did that, and she's also voting for herself for the first time. And a mí me da orgullo. I hear that story, I get chills, and I say that to celebrate her, but to also give other women inspiration and hope, and understanding that her and I, in many ways, hopefully can give you examples in where we represent you, or we speak on behalf of lo que se puede ser. Thank you. I'm complete.
Well, that's all the time we have. So I'm totally kidding. Thank you both for the incredibly beautiful stories, the illustrations of so many different elements of your identities. That it just paints a really, really beautiful picture for many who might feel like they're the only ones. And so I think that theme comes up so often. I don't want to jump into that just yet, but you mentioned the influencers. You mentioned all the influences in the mix of it, Abigail, that make you who you are. Do you mind talking a little bit about your mother and your mother's mother? And
oh man, yes. And I will try to be succinct, because I know that we have 1 hour, and we're gonna have to do part 2, part 3 of this. And
it's a whole series now, yeah.
I say that at all of the amazing webinars I get to participate in. I'll start immediately. My mother, who inspires me daily and constantly, is a wonderful human being, Blanca, and she has inspired me specifically to the way education can empower a woman. In my doctoral studies, my dissertation was dedicated to her. I wrote a lived experience story based on her experience. As I was growing up, I witnessed her get her GED. She dropped out of high school at 16. She eloped and got married and didn't have a high school degree. And I got to watch her and witness her. And even though at the time I didn't know what was happening or what the relevance was, I still remember the imprint of her struggle and her ganas. I mean, she se rajó, and she took she always gets mad at me when I say this story, and I wrote it in print in my dissertation, but she took pre-algebra at the community college like 5 times before she got to algebra, and she said I wanted to quit so bad, but she didn't, and she got her associates, and then she got her bachelor's, and ultimately she gifted me the opportunity to graduate on the same day of our bachelor's degree at 2 different universities, one in New Mexico and one in Texas, where I got to basically congratulate her first on her bachelor's degree, and then that afternoon I received mine. And I will tell you that it was, when you're young and you're going through these things, you don't realize the significance. And as I became a mother, and as I became my educational aspirational journey became a doctoral journey, there's no other way. I had to honor her and Latina Madres like her who aspired to get an education, and for whatever reason, whether it's a personal reason, whether they were aspiring to different professional careers, but whatever the case is, she aspired. And I saw that for the first time in my mother as she raised 4 girls with no high school diploma. She had been a migrant worker, she had been a factory worker, and all the while, aspiring. And then I'll jump straight to my grandmother's. Her mother was a West Texas resident, but after the border crossed us, and she witnessed firsthand accounts. She was a maid in a popular hotel where it was a very what's the word, where they do a lot of market share. They share trades, and it's fluid. And she stood before the signs that said no dogs, no Mexicans, and no women. And that was her life. She didn't know anything different as she was a young adult. And she was a maid at that. And she was a mezcla. So she's got native, and she's got she's totally a mexica, like just mezcla in a world where soldiers would pass through the town, and just diverse populations, and men, majority men. And her stories and her accounts move me often to tears, and I wish I could capture it all, but it's sometimes difficult for our generations to speak about their experiences because they're survival stories. They're beyond traumatic. They're just scars of survival. Traumatic would indicate that there is a road to healing. And for my grandmother, I don't know that there is a healing space. There's just a simple survival space, which is intense. And my other grandmother in Chihuahua, Mexico, she was a ranchera. She was doing gritos, and she was political, and she would dress up as a man to defend her rancho. And golly, she was, I think there's both of my grandmothers in me: survivors, fighters, political activists. But all of that is to say that my ancestral heritage of mujeres are powerful and incredible, and they represent different skin colors and different hair colors and acentos and lenguaje, and I think it's beautiful, and I don't forget where I come from, and I'm often intrigued by knowing more. So thank you for letting me share that.
I love everything that you just said, especially the influencers and beautiful people. I'm thinking only of my abuela at this moment, and all of that exists there. And the stories of resiliency were not without by any means, but lifting them up in that way, I think, is such a great tribute. Thank you for sharing that again. Elenia, do you mind sharing a little bit about the women in your life who have shaped you?
Yeah, no, tuve la piel chinita when she was sharing about her grandmother and her mother and the trauma. I think that as we come to the United States and our families acculturate to being American, I think things change, right? Like our purpose in life is to create better opportunities for our children and our future generations. As an immigrant, my mother, as an undocumented woman herself, like with a sixth grade education, she came to the United States with three little girls, and she used to sell tortillas and tamales. And yeah, like there's so many struggles. And as Abby shares about the trauma that her grandmother endured and may not get to healing, I feel that that is the same place where my mother is, where healing hasn't happened, and I'm not sure if it's going to, because of the trauma endured. Like there was never any access to education, quality health care. So when we don't treat the trauma, we can't get to the healing part. And I think that is true for a lot of immigrants and undocumented people without the access to a way to move up the social ladder. I think we stay behind and fall through the cracks. I loved hearing the story about grandmothers, both maternal and paternal. Like my grandmother on my paternal side was an indigenous woman from Veracruz. That's why I am dark, with dark hair. And yeah, we still like she died. She was born in the house where she died, and the same beautiful landscape and land that they family owned is still owned by our family. It's a tropical rainforest for those who don't know what Veracruz is like. Tenemos café, we have coffee bean trees, we have grow vanilla, vainilla, guayaba, papaya, aguacate. So it was a beautiful, beautiful experience to learn about like our indigenous, all of the indigenous beliefs, like the herbal medicine. Like I believe in it, I practice it, and that's because I learned it from my grandmother. I remember one time as a little girl, a pies, a centipede fell on me on my back, and it like left a mark and it was burning, and I was crying, and she's like, "Ve búscalo, go look for it." So I went for it, and she grabbed it, she lo machacó, she mashed it up, and she put it on me, and I never got a scar, and the pain went away. And when I would get sick, she'd be like, "Ve al árbol de naranja y ve por unas hojas, go to the orange tree and get some leaves." So I'm very grateful that I got to know my indigenous grandmother, that I got to see, the beautiful traditions from like, picking things from nature and healing our bodies with it, to learning about food, right? Like when we were going to eat, matan a la vaca, al cerdo, a la gallina, like they will slaughter the pork and the chicken and whatever it is that we were going to eat. So I'm grateful for that, because I got to learn about environment and the earth and our connection to land and to animals. And, at the end of the day, our purpose in life is to do good and to leave this a better place than we found it in. So for that relationship, I'm eternally grateful for knowing my abuelita. Que era indígena. And when I was little, I didn't know the difference. I didn't know that in this society, especially in Mexico, there's a caste system, entre más güerita, más bonita. And I didn't know that I was the morenita and not the bonita, but it was apparent after a while that people favored my sister because my mom is, güerita de ojos verdes, so my sister was güerita de ojos verdes. So I didn't learn that later, but on my maternal side, like Abby, my family comes from the Yaquis and the Españoles. So Sonora, like Yaqui City. So learning that and meeting my abuelita and my great grandmother, who wore like trenzas, really long trenzas that went all the way down to like her knees, like just seeing like them be so proud of who they were, like allowed me to be proud of who I am, of my dark skin, of my dark hair, because I know that that's something that a lot of people struggle with, because in this country and in the world, we have that colonized mindset where we believe that if si eres güerita, si eres de ojos azules, claros, like if you're blonde, blue-eyed, like you are prettier, versus like if you have dark hair and you're dark, like you're less beautiful, because that's what we have been programmed to believe. So I think my grandmothers taught me the value of knowing who I am through their hard work, and just because they didn't have a choice, they had to be who they were, and just by working really hard. And my grandmother had 15 kids, my great grandmother had like 18 kids, and then just seeing them struggle on their own and trying to make it in a world that isn't designed and set up for people like us. So I'm, grateful that their challenges allowed me to understand the challenges for women like us. And even as a single parent myself now, I think that their strength carries on within me and their traditions will always carry on. And it's something that I want to pass on to my children as well. It's not just our language and, our culture and our beautiful like refranes and everything that we say in our herbal medicine, but, just the acceptance of ourselves, because that is what frees us, right? If we know where we came from.
There's a lot in everything you just said, that the gender roles, the race aspect, the colorism that still exists today as ways to like other certain populations of people based on the color of their skin. I want to talk a little bit about the gender roles. Some that you mentioned, some of them you alluded to in terms of challenges that have allowed you to be reminded of as a single parent. What gender roles do you think are still perhaps something that you acknowledge but are still struggling with working on overcoming as a single parent? Did that come through?
Yeah, did you want, do you
Oh, I'm
want me to
sorry.
answer it, or did you want?
Elenia, if you don't mind, and just
So as a mother of two boys, I want them to understand and know that a woman's role isn't to cook for them and to clean for them. That we live in this country and in a society and in this world, and I don't care where they live and end up living in the world, that women's obligations aren't to take care of men. I want them to grow up and to be independent and to know all these things for themselves. And I think that's something that's still very programmed in our little boys and our children. I see it when I'm touring and visiting schools, when I hear the conversations. I think that, the opportunities like, the STEM fields are less attractive for young girls because, we still believe that we still have to grow up and get married and have children. And I have friends my age who don't have children. And I feel bad for them sometimes because they think that it is their value is in getting married and having children. And I really believe that that's something that's totally unhealthy in our culture, and especially amongst Latinos, where like if you're not in a relationship or married or have children, like there must be something wrong with you. And I think those expectations that are placed on our women, our Latino women, are very unhealthy and fair. And as I'm raising good citizens of this world, I want them to understand that a woman will come with her successes and her talents and her skills, and he has to bring the same to the table. That there's no expectation of that woman that they are not going to be in their life to like make them happy or to take care of them, because that was their mother's responsibility, and now they're adults and they have to take care of themselves. And I really do believe that it's a lot of work, because changing cultural programming is really hard. Because even now, when you like in relationships, like even though we are women, um we're expected to do things because we're Latina or because we're Mexicanas. Like men will ask me like, do you know how to cook? Do you make tortillas? And like all these things that I'm like, what? Like they're unrealistic expectations or expectations because of who we represent, right? And what they're expecting from us, from like the over sexualizing us to like making us like the the, oh, my favorite, the crazy Latina or the crazy Mexican. So all those things are very unhealthy. And as I'm raising these boys to be good men, like I have to tell them like that is not healthy. That is not correct. Even if you see it like on social media and people like to like, make TikToks and Instagram, like our women are not just sexy, or like they're not just objects that are going to like talk about because of how they look. I'm like, and we are not crazy because of the way we are. Like we have made be programmed to watch novelas and may act a little bit more passionate, but that does not make us crazy. And I think I went off topic on the general.
No, I love that. The spicy Latina trope I think is one that I relate to the way you do. But no, I hear you. Thank you. Abigail, so I was reading your dissertation. There's a term that I was introduced to that I hadn't heard of before that I think if you don't mind talking about it a little bit, chicanismo.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. And if it's okay, right before I get into that, it's I just want to piggyback what Ilenia said. I think it's powerful, and I'm in alignment and agreement with what she said. But I've also, the older I've gotten, and the more that I reflect on my mother and my mother's mother and the women in my community, right? I am a single mother, and I have been married, and I had to kind of arrive at a conclusion where my example of matrimonio was so beautiful, and to deny myself the ability to view it as a gift of beauty in the way that my mother was, and I'm going to use the word, and people sometimes have adverse effects, but allow me to explain. My mother's ability to be submissive to my father, and my father's ability to be submissive to my mother, and how they have each other's backs, and how they have navigated this world together, good, bad, and ugly, right? To me, as I've gotten older, I've had the chance to reflect back on those gender roles and the norms and the misconception of what they are. So when I used to talk about this beauty of me entregaba a mi esposo, I wanted to be loyal to my husband, and yes, I wanted to, and I don't like to cook, but the fact that I wanted to cook for him or take care of him, and he, myself, often people or women, or in general, just people would cringe. And I now feel very comfortable in my identity to say, no me importa, eso es lo que quiero. And that's what I've witnessed. I think it's a beautiful gift of my own heritage and identity that I identify with. And I was fortunate to have had un ejemplo. And I hope that my future partner will provide this equal ability to entregarme en una manera hermosa, and to be unapologetic that as a mujer, it's my gift to give, in which I got to see my mother do, right? And again, it wasn't easy, and they arrived at this space in their marriage now, in their 60s. But I still find that within my own reflection of how society has tried to make me feel about marriage, or about my femininity, or my contributions towards matrimonio, or even my singlehood, right? Like, so when I've been single, it's like, a veces, pobrecita or whatever. And I'm like, no, there's so many things that we have to self-define. And just like Elena said, we've got to correct, right? Because we've gone on normalizing certain behaviors. And that includes behaviors that we actually value from our culture, that we actually value from our heritage, from our como ser, tenemos maneras de ser that you can't replicate or reproduce. They just are, for lots of different intersections, whether it's gender or race or ethnicity or geographical location. So I just wanted to add that piece. And it actually positions me perfectly to talk about chicanismo, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. So I know I can talk about it for a long time, but I won't. Really, it's in the most simplest form. It's a lens in which, or the ability to own exactly what I just said, my identity in its complexities and in its intersections of gender and race and in all of these constructs, and to really contribute to a political stance, and it doesn't have to be political, it can just be an identity stance that says, I bring value to the table, and I have a unique lens, and I identify in these ways, whether it's language or, I when I meet some of the people that I am most authentic around, my Spanish English comes out. I mean, it just, hablo y I'm code switching, and it's natural. My first language was Spanish. I get nervous when I say the word CH, especially in public. But at the end of the day, it's my most fronteriza true self, right? And so the ability to understand and to use chicanismo as a way to stand in the complex world of a man's world in the Latino space, and then white feminism in a construct, and to stand in that power and look at the world with ownership and orgullo and poder, and to also know that that offers so much in all conversations, in conversations of professionalism, conversations of living, conversations of economic, conversations of health, et cetera, and so on. And then what it does too is it allows space for others to decide how they identify and what their lens is. And the more that we can find our own lens in our own space, I think the better we can tell our stories.
I really love that. Sorry, Danny, I just wanted to add that, like, I often think about that, because I've been married as well. And that is something that I really do value about our culture. Although I did not see that in my own upbringing, it is something that I value. The fact that we are amorosas, cariñosas, that we love, it's not catering or serving, but we do love to take care of not just our husband, but our children and our vecino and our maestra. And I do love that. And I struggle with it because I am not as, I haven't really actualized like Abby, but I really do believe, like, I struggle. My children often tell me, like, I never know, Mom, if you're going to be like the strong Latina today, or if you're like chivalry's dead. So like I struggle with that because sometimes I do love those things about like our traditional men who like open doors and take care of women and love them and, just nurture them and treat them with respect, which are things that I don't really see nowadays. So I also like want those things and look for those things. And I want those things for my children as well, because although I want them to be self-sufficient and independent, I also want them to find love and someone to love them and value them and nurture them and apapacharlos y que los amen. So like, I also value that about our culture. So I struggle, going back and forth from like what Abby calls, her chicanismo. Like I struggle from like, am I, mi americanismo, mi mexicanismo, and I'm like an immigrant. So like, I haven't gotten to that point where I'm like, what, like I'm this person and I accept it. I still like struggle, like going back and forth, like my Americanism and like my family in Mexico City is very different, very traditional. When I go visit, there's not one church that they don't find where there's a Virgen de Guadalupe that they're like, prométeme que te vas a casar otra vez. Promise me, because like I always say, like, I'm fine, like I'm okay, I'm so happy now. And they like don't accept the reality that it's okay to not be married, because our tradition and our culture, what they believe is that you should be married, and even me being divorced was really difficult for them. So I struggle because I have to go between all of these different types of ideologies and people in my life that I love and adore and look up to. But at the end of the day, I have to figure out who I am and what is right for me and what works for me and what kind of human and woman do I want to be, because that woman that I'm going to be is the kind of woman that my children will look up to and will look for as adults. So it's a struggle because I never know.
And I think that's I keep thinking about the scene from Selena, the movie, where they're on the bus going to Mexico and they're talking about all the intersections and they're talking about how difficult it is when you have to like know all these things and the intersectionality of it. I think of that movie often when I'm thinking of the different identities that I hold. Ilenia, on the subject of identities and kind of intersectionality still, how do you self-define like some of these things like femininity?
Like what? I'm sorry.
Like femininity.
How do I self-identify?
Or self-define. How would you define femininity for yourself, and what elements are elements that you'd want to like instill currently and for future generations?
Well, the kindness and compassion, but that kindness, compassion, I think there's a lot of nurturing that I feel like goes with the feminine persona that I want, that I am. There's a lot of affection, but there's also a lot of strength. And, in femininity, like we see all of this boldness and strength and just courage that we have to have, um, in order to function in the society in a male dominated world. Although we are moving up and breaking ceilings, we're still not there, especially not Latinas. Like we have like the white women, the Asian women, the Black women, and Latina women are way at the bottom. So we still have a lot of work to do, in a way of, I'm talking about like how we get paid and in our spaces of like, whether it's political or professional spaces. But I think that just the way that I view my femininity and identify as a person of like, we are not going to be one dimensional. It's just, we have to like go through all of these different ways of being and emotions, and in order to function in the society and to be women, right? And to be mothers, because at the end of the day, like Abby and I are mothers, and we can't just be that strong, like direct, blunt, person that we are when we're in our professional roles. We have to go code switch and go, even like with our children who we're trying to raise bicultural and biliterate, we have to like tap into our soft and loving and nurturing side, because boys need a lot of love and nurture, because we want them to not grow up and think, one saying that always comes up in my head is like, no llores, que eres niña. Like, are you a little girl? Like, I would hear this said a lot to my stepbrother by my stepdad, like, eres niña porque estás llorando. And it's okay to be a little girl and to cry, because that is who we are. We're human. And I want my boys to know that they can cry and they can be vulnerable and they can be sensitive. And there is a time where they can be strong and they can be like bold. And I want them to know that you don't have to be just, strong and not have emotions. So I think with all that, what I'm trying to say is like, it's okay to be vulnerable and emotional and strong and have all of those elements. And I think that's what makes, woman, is the fact that she can be all those people and do so many things at the same time, whether it's just being a mother, a stay-at-home mother, because that is the hardest job anyone can have, or be a CEO, or be, a doctor. Like it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, being a woman is really difficult. And being a mother is another challenge. And you have to have all these elements that are always working in different directions when you are raising children. And I think that's what sets us apart when we are leaders, is the fact that we tap into the motherly element. I think that I hear that a lot from my friends, the fact that I'm nurturing or trying to mother them. And that's how I lead. And I think about like, is this good for my children? Would I want this for my child? If it's not good enough for my child, it's not good enough for anyone. Does this person, this adult, like that inner child, how can I tap into that child? And it's my mother figure that comes out to like nurture them and allow them to trust me so they can feel like safe. And I think that that's the advantage of like not only having feminine energy, but also being a mother, because we're always trying to take care of people.
And it's beautiful. And in addition to that, adding the race element to that, the Latinx matriarch, Abigail, taking some of everything that Elenia just put. How do we get to a space or a place where we are redefining the narrative around the Latinx matriarch, and eliminating the toxic pieces of it and elevating it the way that you both have as mothers and as leaders in your community?
And that is a loaded question, but I'm happy to take it on because I'm in a safe space. And I feel like that this is actually a testimonial of how we do it. We have conversations, we have crucial conversations, we have hard conversations, and we actually be vulnerable in those conversations. And I love everything that my hermana just said, because in the complexities of motherhood and being a woman and all these things, I love that the theme that I'm hearing in our conversations today is something that I live by. It's the yes and. You can be confused and convicted. Yes, you can be affirmative on one thing and a little unsure about being amorosa. You can, yes and I think that the more that we allow ourselves to be in that space to say, well, yes, and the more that we allow ourselves to expand and grow. And I hit my 40s and something just happened. All of a sudden, I was less confused and less a hot mess and more curious about who I wanted to be. And I think that it's interesting that we don't tell women more often that it's okay to not know, that it's okay to be in this in-between phase, and that it's probably going to last forever, but that it gets better and better. And no one has a set time limit on waking up one morning and going, oh, life is beautiful, and I feel amazing in my multiple roles, and et cetera, and so on. I think that it's important that whoever is listening, male or female, that as you experience life and as you go through, especially if you are open to learning from each other and listening to different narratives, that you will evolve, that you will grow. And so to answer your question, I think we are there. We're here now. We are in a space that we've never been before, where I'm the kind of mother that I've hoped I would be, that I am giving my kids an example. Divorce was difficult, but in and through the divorce, I knew that I wanted to give my children choice of ways of being and ways to be an example of what a woman would, what I want them to know women can act like and be like and aspire to be in, and what, giving them choice. And I feel that my decisions, even though they have been difficult, to include my educational journey, to include my professional journey, that while none of them have been easy, they are witnessing it. And they are now developing new narratives than I had. And I developed new narratives than my mother had, and my mother's mother, et cetera, and so on. And so the exciting answer to your question is we are there. We are here. We are having conversations. We are hitting it dead on. And, we're questioning. And when you say toxic, I don't know anything about no toxic women. I think we've never been toxic. I actually think that we are learning how to describe ourselves better. So earlier, Lenia said, or you said, I think, spicy Latina or sexualized. And I'm thinking, but we're passionate. There's something about our DNA that inspires. We're rebellious and we're passionate and we're curious. And if you mush that up together, well, yeah, it could be confused for something else. But language is so beautiful when you use language to better describe and to better narrate ways of being, then we're empowered. And so when we talk about the matriarch, when we talk about gender roles, when we talk about values, we have arrived in a place, I believe, as a society, Latinx or otherwise for that matter, as a society where there are so many intersections of who we are and who we are becoming. 15 years ago, I was working at the county and I witnessed a huge turnaround where children were being granted custody. Men were being granted custody of their children. And for the first time in my professional experience, I didn't see women be granted full custody of children. I started seeing men, and I had to start teaching classes on braiding hair and being with your daughters and, what do daughters need? And there was a huge need to help empower humans on how to do things differently. And so no longer can we really rely on old narratives. They just don't exist anymore. We're evolving, we're expanding. And while the words that our history has served us up in ways of patriarchy and matriarchy and all of these things, and while there is sentidos of all of it ingrained and braided into our history, woven into our stories, I think we're constantly redefining it. And we're doing it in ways that my hermana just said, our sons, we are raising sons. I have 2 sons and a daughter. My daughter is not at all the way I was at 13. She is brilliant and critical thinker, and not to say that I wasn't, but not at that level at 13. And I come home and I listen to the existential conversations that my 17-year-old started having when he was 13, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm so excited about these next generations. And I know that oftentimes we talk about it in deficit, but I don't feel that way. I think we have amazing humans coming up and being raised up by amazing mothers and fathers. And for that matter, vecindades, right? One of the questions you asked earlier, or you prefaced, was, or I think in our setup, we talked about who raised us, and I'm going, well, shoot, my mama did, my grandma did, the bus driver did, my kindergarten teacher really stayed with me a lot after school because my mom had 2 jobs. And then I think about who I work for now, and I often tell people I work for the district that raised me. And what a blessing to come back and give to that. So I know I was long-winded, Danny.
No, that was, I mean, I think you put even my question a lot better than I could have ever formulated it. So thank you. I mean, each time, there's so many elements here that I think I'm just learning and taking away from. First, I think you said that really moved me was the and so thinking about not only everything we bring to the table, but our community and those unique qualities as value adds. And I think that as I grow and as I understand, so thank you for illustrating that. So I do before we run out of time, I do want to go back a little bit and talk about the inspirations in your life. You mentioned your kids. Abigail, you also said you want to talk about your sister, her kids, and so you have a sister.
I was referring to my sister up in that screen with me here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I totally no, okay. I totally misinterpreted that. No,
It's my fault because I'm constantly calling her my hermana. And while she may not be blood, she's definitely my sister from another. We're just soul sisters. I met her and we have so much in common. And you don't meet people like that every day. But so that's my apologies, Danny. I didn't mean to confuse you.
No. I that no worries at all. So before we now, I love this, and as we said from when we first met together, that was a familial you brought your energy, the way you talk about yourselves in the community. It is a true inspiration, and it is encouraging to have a different frame of mind, and especially when we use some of the words that are the words we go to when we describe, the women in our lives, or ways that we act, and how those are described, especially when they're other. And so thank you for providing those examples for us. Both of you are in education, and so before we end today, I'll ask one more question about how we can, as a community, implement implement practices and environments that do lift up not only families and parents and women, but young girls. What are there any changes or things that you've seen in your own community, holistically and equitably?
Well, I will let the expert answer this question, but I will add to something she said that really touched my heart and resonated. So when I first moved here from Tucson to Phoenix, my community, and I've always said this, I wouldn't be here without the 25 teachers that inspired me in every single school that I went to, because I was always moving. And my kids are, I guess as a mama, we're always going to say our kids are so brilliant and kind and loving, but they are, and they wouldn't be that way. And it's not because of me, it's because of the teachers. And I want to take time to thank not just the teachers, because they're doing an amazing job, but the cafeteria ladies and the bus drivers. My kids don't take the bus, but the people who are watching them when school's out, and the cafeteria ladies who feed my children every day, who spend more time with my kids than I do. So to them, I'm eternally grateful because that's who fed my soul for a really long time. And my community is my family. Like, I ran for school board because I truly love the community I belong to. And that has helped me through different opportunities, bring programs, whether they're just focused on Latina girls, like we brought Tecnolochicas, that's focused on girls from 9/11 to get them into STEM fields. But just being part of something that is every human being's desire is to be loved, to feel safe, and to belong. And I feel like my community has allowed me to be that person. I continued on the second term because my community and my district and my teachers and my superintendent, my board members, they're like my family. And when you don't have a family, that is probably the closest thing that you'll ever have. And I think that my community continues to shape who I am. And so do my children and all of the children that I serve, because I learned so much from them and I'm always inspired by them. And like Abigail said, like, I am so inspired and I know that we are going to be okay because I've heard these little kiddos from kinder all the way to 8th grade, and the things that they say, I'm just like super impressed because they are so talented and they have so much grit. And I know that our future is going to be okay because they're going to be our leaders, and we need to continue to invest in them and empower them and teach them how to advocate for themselves and their families so they can, like, you know, be self-sufficient and grow up to change this world and to be leaders who they're going to be. But I'll let Abby answer the question.
Yeah, it's hard not to get emocionada as we talk about who raised us, because in our own experiences, we know that it takes a village. It's una vecindad. It's not done alone in our school systems. We're both very, very invested in public school systems, and we understand the value that these entities bring. She said it perfectly. They spend more time with our kids than we do. And, as real as that is, it means that to answer your question properly, it means we all play a role. Every single one of us, our hermanos, our allies, las mujeres that with or without children are figures of leadership in every sense of the word, in every capacity they bring. And we all have a responsibility. And sometimes we forget in our own worlds, we forget that we all have power. We forget that we all offer, whether it's time and energy, whether it's a skill set, a language. There's something that each one of us has that we can offer. Compassion and caring doesn't require a certificate or an agenda. It just means that you are there to help and contribute. And as I think about the topic of today's plática, I think about asking ourselves, number one, what women are important? What women in our lives are important? What women in our lives are important to us? And by asking that question, you can say, well, what can I do to support her or to help her or to contribute to the causes that are important to her? That's one way. Because mothers, whether they're abuelas or tías or whatever it is, they carry the weight of vecindades, right? We're not just raising our kids, the kids' friends that are at our house, their friends, the cheer team, whatever it is. And we're not biased. We'll bring them all in. But then also asking yourself the question is as looking at the mothers in your school system, in your school, in your baseball team, or whatever it is, wondering and asking yourself, right? If by making her life easier, better, contributing, assisting, whatever it is, how does that affect generations to come? Because what we have to understand is that this is generational work. This is not a one-off. This is generational work. Whatever we do today, or however we help and assist others, or whatever we do to contribute to young leadership academies or inspiring women's or young ladies self-esteem workshops, or even doing young males of color leadership work, because our young males are partners and best friends and allies to our females. So all of that work is intersecting and it contributes, but more importantly, it's all generational. So think about the work that you're doing today and how it's going to impact generations to come. I know we're running out of time, and I know you said to be tranquila, that we're going to fit it all in, but you know, I gotta say today, just right before this, a while before this, I read an article about a mother. Her name is Keldy Mabel Gonzalez, Breve de Zúñiga, and she's from Honduras. She was one of the first mujeres who was separated from her two sons and reunited just very recently, since 2017. And I gotta tell you, I can't imagine being separated from my children for that long. And I honor her today. I honor her strength. I honor her resilience. I honor her children's resilience. And my prayer for her and her family for generations to come is that we provide her safety and sanctuary and a future, and that they prosper with their vecindad. And I say that with all my corazón, because I always think that we are all one decision away, one paycheck away. We could have been born in a different country. And como mujeres, you know, we have to value ourselves and each other, apoyar. So I don't mean to get emotional, but I just wanted to make sure that before the hour and people have to log off, that we honored her and women like her all over this globe, this entire globe. Thank you, Danny, for letting me say that.
Of course, no, I can't. I mean, that was, I'm like holding back a lot of emotions at the moment. I think that was, I mean, just those questions, like of asking yourself, I'm realizing I had not even come close to beginning to like unpack or ask those exact questions about the woman in my life that I consider important, in addition to how do I honor them and how do I make sure to lift up all those last things you said. I don't think there's a better way to, you know, in this discussion than to do it with the people that we want to honor and lift up. And so, following your lead, Ilenia, who you would like to honor?
Yes, for me, it's all the mamás, todas las mamás. It is having a child, being a parent is the most difficult job I have, and I've had many jobs. You know, for our Latino community, for our immigrant community, like Abby just discussed, like that is even more challenging. I can't imagine being separated from my children at all. But for those mamás, all the mamás in, you know, our country and our world, like, thank you for doing the work that you do. Like, it is the hardest job. And if we all together work together to make this a better world by helping each other, and I've been very lucky to have other moms, other single moms, and just moms that have helped me when I can't pick up my kids from school or soccer practice, or they have fed my children when I'm really busy. So, you know, this is for all. I want to honor all the mothers of the world, because we are shaping the future generations of this world. And that is the most important job. Besides teachers, moms have the most important job. And that is instilling these amazing, great values in our children so they can be good citizens of this world, because we need to be more compassionate and loving and forgiving. And to them, to all the mothers in the world, I honor you, because I know it is hard. And sometimes you just want to cry yourself to sleep, but we have to do it for our kids and for our future.
If I may, you know, I want to add you know, adding my mother as somebody that I want to honor in her memory. I lost my mother when I was 4, and I was raised by my tia and my abuela, a lot of tias and abuelas and teachers the same way. And so it's it's a reminder of that community aspect, and there's so much more that I should be doing, so to make sure that they know that I do honor them and carry them with me in my day to day. And so I'm blown away. I'm like a little kind of speechless. Thank you both for this incredible conversation. I think that I'm taking a lot from it, and just the way of my frame of thinking. I'm inspired and I'm excited and optimistic, and I don't think that's necessarily how I start my days. And so, thank you. I'm from the bottom of my heart. On behalf of All in Education, thank you. It was truly like I'm like stuttering now. So I will end it there. If there's any last shout outs you'd like to give, I would encourage everyone watching in the comments. Feel free to add who you're honoring this Mother's Day. But other than that.
Thank you, Danny. And I just wanted to end by saying, muchas gracias, feliz Dia de las Madres. And I honor Abigail, who inspires me to do good. And she may not know this because we haven't reconnected, but like when I met her, she inspired me in so many ways and gave me strength. She may not like know the impact she's had in my life, but that is what we do when we share our stories.
And we're not going to cry, Denny.
It's okay.
No, you know what? We can cry, and it's beautiful, and it's an expression. And like I said, when I met her, I felt an immediate connection. It's hard. I should say this. I hope in my life that I meet more and more women like Elena, because she was a gift in my existence and in my space, and I don't take that for granted. So we're gonna connect. Voy a venir a verte. Te voy a dar un abrazo. And for those participants that are out there, thank you. Happy Mother's Day. Gosh, we're so blessed that you wanted to spend time with us. And Danny, gracias for your guidance today.
Well, thank you so much. Feliz Dia de las Madres.
Gracias.